Richard, thank you for coming on and chatting with me today. Now, you are part of Advance. You are the National Director for Advance right now. Can I jump straight in to ask you a question? Because I know this is going to be at the forefront of why people are watching this, seeing your name. You were on a podcast and you said that for Wales, if you didn't think it was appropriate to stand, then you wouldn't stand in the Senedd. Is that still the case, or is Advance definitely going to stand for the Welsh elections?
Well, we said that because what we stand for isn't expedience. We're not just looking for paper candidates or anybody that's not really going to be there other than just for being on the ballot. So it's very important to find good people that are going to do a lot of good work. And we believe in our position, we believe in our principles, our approach to politics. I mean, we're trying to achieve a number of different things really in changing the sort of paradigm shift in British politics and UK politics. So yes, we have identified many brilliant candidates, and we will be looking to stand. I think that the way that the elections will be working now for these sort of devolved parliaments is that it does give the opportunity for smaller parties, as we're a growing party, a chance. And it's fundamentally important that we seize that opportunity. We give the people a democratic choice to sort of elect people that really stand on principles, that really stand for things and give people a voice. So yes, we've identified candidates, and we're at the moment we are looking at the campaigns that will run there, but that is the plan at the moment. Yes,
because it's not a long time until the elections. You've done so May is the elections. How are you going to do this in such a short space of time? Because Pete Prosser is the Welsh director for Advance.
Yes,
great guy. He's a fantastic guy. But how are you going to be able to get the campaign out there, the candidates, policies, everything within this short space of time?
Yeah, no, I mean, we've got a monumental task ahead of us. But equally, it's a monumental task for the general election in a number of years, right? So how do we achieve that? Bags of enthusiasm.
Yes.
We've got the support that we've got, and the people that we've got working with us are incredibly patriotic, enthusiastic, and so I have no doubt that they have the courage and resilience to get out there. It's going to be exhausting. It's going to be completely exhausting, but it's something that's needed. And when I said that we were deciding whether it's in our interest to stand and whatnot, we're led fundamentally by the people that want to stand for us. And when there's that overwhelming desire from loads of patriotic people that want to do that, and that we've got the opportunity to do that, then we need to take that opportunity. So I mean, there's a number of things that we're going to be doing, ways in which you reach people. There's a million different ways. True. So what we're really trying to do, a lot of it will be social media. There will be, as you can imagine, the traditional action days, door knocking, you name it. I understand that a lot is being done to sort of look at what policies could be announced for Wales in particular, and that kind of stuff. We're looking to do where we can, conferences, whether that's sort of mini conferences that pop up in places that we can get members of the college or Ben or myself or whoever to go there with the candidates to sort of rally the support. Or if we can get bigger ones in, we'll do it all. As you said, there's not a lot of time.
No.
But we will give it our best shot with the time that we've got and the people that we've got.
And anything can happen. There's like a Gorton and Denton.
Anything can happen.
Anything can happen. And I think it's a real important time for Wales because we've had such a long time of Labour government, which has not been great for us.
No.
But it really is a toss-up right now, just laying it out there between Plaid and Reform. A lot of people have concerns that with Advance coming on the scene, that it's going to split the vote for Reform. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that it takes a while to establish brand recognition, you know. And one thing that I think is really encouraging to see is that without any real mainstream media support or anything like that, Advance rocketed past the hurdle that we put ourselves on for 30,000 members. We've got thousands of members and supporters in Wales, so we'll get there. With regards to splitting the vote, I mean, the difference is, I suppose, if you're looking at the sort of, dynamics of left and right, is the left are much more organised in coalescing around, a candidate in a certain way. Whereas the right are not. At the moment, the right of centre is very fractured into various different elements. I would say that we need to have this out in this way. There does need to be that sort of battle for the right. And as we've noticed, I would say that on many issues, reform isn't the answer for many issues. Advance UK wouldn't exist if it was for the fact that reform isn't the answer. They when I think it was Winston Marsh, I believe, where obviously Farage was saying about how deportations, it wasn't even an ambition and they wasn't going to do it. Richard Tice had mentioned about the demographic replacement and how it wasn't concerned for him because he'll be long gone by the time that's an issue. That sort of very closed mindset, very narrow, short, vision is really terrible. Advance UK has come on the scene and that rhetoric started to change. Now all of a sudden Reform announced their policies for deportations and then they changed their stance on many other things. Most namely, actually, recently was when we announced our culture policy. They said that they would then stop churches and Christian places of worship being converted. So we're needed in that sense to keep them honest, but also, just being there to keep them honest shows that they're not really behind what they are now saying. They don't believe in it. They're expedients. Whereas Advance UK is the real deal. The difference between fundamentally, and this is why I say that the vote splitting argument isn't justified and is not right, is every single party that there is on the political landscape at the moment believes in finding their demographic and targeting how they can appeal to those people. Whereas what Advance UK does, it looks at the issues that the country's got and how to fix them. So within that, you can trust that there's the integrity and the desire and the will to actually go ahead and do it. So it won't split the vote. It's actually offering something completely different in my view. And we have to start. We have to start somewhere. Otherwise, if you say, well, you're going to split the vote, so you should just stand down. Well, then we've lost already. And we need to sort of build up that awareness in people of who we are, so that when we get to that point in 2029, or maybe the next time that we're doing these elections for Wales and for Scotland, and obviously next year's for Northern Ireland, that people are much more aware of who we are. They've seen our track record if we get a couple of seats in this election, or they see how our councillors, because we're going to be doing a lot with our councillors as well, in ways that other parties don't. And they'll see that and they'll see, well, actually, these guys are changing the game. And they're the people to get behind here. So that's why I believe it's very important.
So do you acknowledge that Wales is important in this elections, and that's why Advance is standing, because Wales is important?
Yes, absolutely. Wales is important.
I know
we've got, in fact, I think probably our biggest campaign in May is in Wales. We, like I said, we needed to find good candidates that would really do good work for the community. And Wales is actually the sort of, I suppose, we will be standing candidates in Scotland as well. But Wales in particular, I think, is what I've been taking up a lot of my time actually to get it done. Which we can't neglect anywhere. We're very committed to Scotland as well, and for the elections we'll be having in England. But again, it was so important for us to find top of the range candidates to do that. And
do you believe that you've got the right director for Advance in Wales now with Pete Prosser?
Absolutely, yeah. I back Pete completely. In fact, if ever I'm sort of feeling tired from a lot of the online comments and the workload, I phone Pete and just his attitude.
He's so enthusiastic, isn't he? All the time.
Well, you can't not. I mean, you can disagree with political philosophy on certain areas, but you can't deny Pete's enthusiasm and love for Wales. And I think that you need to have people that care so deeply about it, and Pete, embodies that completely. Yeah,
and he's not controversial, he's not aggressive, he's just a guy who really loves his country and really wants to see change in his country, and I think that's all you could ask for in a leader, really, isn't it?
You need that, you need the passion. I mean, we've had people that are very self-serving in politics, and to have somebody that really just puts, his country first.
Yeah.
And like I said, you can disagree with the politics,
Yeah.
but fundamentally, anybody that gets into politics should have that enthusiasm and that passion for their country, and Pete has that completely.
Absolutely.
In spades.
Yeah, he does. He's great. Now, I want to just ask about you, because you've been part of the Royal Navy, and so you've had 8 years experience there. So you're not just a professional politician.
No.
And I think that's the concerns that another party's come on the scene, just more career politicians, but that's not who you are. You've come out of the Royal Navy and now you're part of Advance. What do you want to do in Advance, taking into consideration your experience?
Yeah, brilliant question. I mean, so I was in the Royal Marines. Obviously, it's part of the Royal Navy. I did that for 8 years, and so I mean, I got involved in politics. I suppose that there's a number of reasons. I think anyone does. For me, you can argue that the sense of duty. Obviously, I was part of the military, and I know that the people that I worked with my time in the Marines were very patriotic and had that sense of duty. For the most part, I think people get involved because they care and they want to make a difference. Whether they divert from that, and as many of the politicians seemingly that we have at the moment, I do believe that fundamentally they start off on that journey with that completely in mind.
Yeah.
So what I've noticed really, and where I want to, I suppose, take Advance UK, is Ben often talks about, and many people often talk about, we can trace the issues that we face today back to 97, Tony Blair, unaccountable legislation, unelected quangos, and it's just so many things that were completely wrong. Removing the sort of democratic element of our politics to quangos and things like that. And although I completely agree with all of that, what I seem to have noticed is that we've had this shift where the political class is much more content with looking the electorate in the eye and lying to them. And we see that across everywhere in politics. With Labour, recently the smash the gangs, not a penny on your council tax. They were going to freeze energy prices. They didn't intend on delivering any of those things. The Conservatives, they had said getting immigration to the tens of thousands again and again and again, and obviously had no intention of delivering on those things. And Reform positioned themselves as anti-globalists, but then they swan off to Davos on the dollar of the Iranian billionaires.
Right.
So you've got these things that are just not integral, to what people are saying. They're very slippery, should we say? And we want to sort of bring that back. So for me, with Advance UK, and what I really intend to do, and we are very young as a party, we're 9 months old, but it really needs to be led by the ground up, not top down, as many of these, well, in fact, all of these parties are. It has to be a grassroots movement, and it has to be led by the members. So we need to create different mechanisms to make it as democratic as possible. We don't want to do things by committee, because then you find you can never do things.
Right, yeah,
but there does need to be that element where people know that their voices are heard.
Right.
And that they know that they get input to those things. So, when we've got our college, for example, our founding members, so the way that they was elected was through very rigorous. I was on the college. I remember how rigorous it was, to get people into the college, to get the SMEs to then deliver the policies and things like that. Now we have the founding members. We'll be shifting to a way in which we can have members elect them.
Right.
So there'll be a mechanism for that. Our policies are draft at the moment. There'll be mechanisms built into software that we're building. Our IT team is absolutely amazing, and they've been moving at light speed to get the framework in place.
Sure.
At this stage now, we're building the framework more so that we can let our members tell us what they think the next policy should be, what they think is wrong with the current policies that we've got, or what things need to be considered. So it's going to be, and we've had many questions that come in. As you've seen, Ben is very accessible. He goes to Spaces. I don't know any other leader that goes on X Spaces, and people can phone him up if they've got his number, and he answers it, and he'll message back. So for me, what I'm trying to do really is really try to make it ground up.
Yeah.
And I think that people will see that as time goes on. It takes a while to do anything, to do it properly.
Yeah.
We need to embed the framework of our foundations. And we've had a few curveballs in the sense of Gorton and Denton, the May elections. And we want to enable people to be able to stand, if they want to stand in good areas, being led by, sensible approach to whether it's a good place for us to do so or not.
Sure.
Sometimes we just need to go, and sometimes people want to go, but we have to advise them that perhaps maybe we should build our strength in that area first and build branches and things. So, long-winded answer, but essentially really desperately trying to make it completely ground-up focused.
Now, that's not what any other party have done.
No.
Right, especially with this college that's been set up as well, that think tank of people who can really hash out policies and detailed policies, not just, we'll get rid of the 20 mile an hour zone. But detailed stuff. What do you think that's going to bring to politics that's not existing there right now?
Well, it brings a level of accountability.
Yeah.
You know where they've come from. You can. I mean, a lot of these things, the policies for other parties, they're either someone might wake up one morning and say, let's bring back hanging, and they'll send out a tweet, and that's policy now, right? Or for other parties, there will be some sort of dark room where they scribble away, and then they get a few focus groups in to see what works well. And like I said before, they're really sort of targeting the demographic. We really need to appeal to these people,
right?
And therefore, how can we make it so that we're attractive to these people?
Right.
Whereas our approach is, we want people that eventually, obviously, as we grow and don't have the founding members, as we bring people in, they'll be elected, and then you've got that accountability. You know who's in the college, you know how it's been done, you've opened it up to the members. So we're looking at the issues and trying to fundamentally fix the issues and invite scrutiny from our members on those things and ask them which policies would they like to see next. So all of that obviously is coming. But it's a fundamentally different approach to it that I think is very much important.
I think it's quite revolutionary, to be honest, because we've had so long where we are dictated to by a party leader, firstly, and then you get these puppets who just carry out everything they want to do. Ben isn't like that.
No.
Which is quite refreshing, really. This is the first time I've met Ben today, and he's just very grounded, but got emotional in the interview over just talking about Britain and what he wants Britain to look like again.
Yeah.
I think that is such a refreshing point of view, to see emotion in a man who loves his country.
Well, I mean, absolutely. And I think that for the most part, I don't know if we're familiar as the electorate of seeing genuine, honesty, and those sorts of emotions. For example, I think that his recent sort of talks about whether we should do a merger or not. He was very open with the fact that his ego isn't in the way.
Yes.
He would take a step back and do whatever is required, and that would be put to our college, as he said, and then it would have been put to our members. So it's not even his decision, but he took himself out of the equation. And the way that he responds to that, I don't think really, like I said, since '97, we're used to seeing a type of politics that really hasn't served us very well.
Terrible.
And we're used to seeing people just lie to us, focus on different areas where they think that their votes are. We need to change that mindset. And we only do that by leading by example. And I mean, I back Ben completely. The reason that I'm here, I could have stayed where I was working in the financial technologies industry.
Right.
I was quite happy there. I've got a very young family as well, 5 kids, so I'm quite busy. I'm quite busy. But no, I felt like I needed to do this because I was inspired by him. And I definitely need, I definitely believe that the country needs somebody like Ben, building the party that he's built, to see us through and have that, like I said, paradigm shift back to seeing some accountability in politics.
So would you say that the Advance are a party of people that rule by conviction rather than career?
Yes, completely. Absolutely. We know that there's careerists. We've seen them jumping ship from one party to another.
Right.
And they're doing that with all of the sniping and the backstabbing you don't really achieve anything of meaningful substance for the country if you have self-serving people.
Yeah.
You need the people that are willing to put in the hard work for the love of the country, for the conviction, as opposed to the self-interests.
Yeah.
You need to remove as many self-interested people as possible.
Yeah.
That's what you need to do.
And how do you do that? Because you're bound to, in advance, get people who are self-serving. They put on a good act. How do you reason with that to try and move them out of the way?
Well, I mean, it's very difficult, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But I think it does come out in the wash. You have to do a lot of due diligence on people, but at the same time, you have to sort of, I suppose, really allow people the opportunity to sort of, be themselves a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, with Advance, it's a party of, it encourages independent thought. It encourages people to speak their mind and things like that. So if you give somebody, I mean, we can find lots of good people outside of politics.
Yes.
That's needed. And when you do find that, you can find the overwhelming majority will be great.
Sure.
The few small percentage, will be the ones difficult to identify.
Right.
But I like to think that we'll harbour a culture which actually really sort of encourages those sorts of people to come forward.
Yeah.
I mean, it is going to be a mountain to climb. We have got a mountain to climb. And it's very easy to look at other parties that are, riding a wave of popularity at the moment, or that ebbs and flows.
Yes.
And the people, I suppose, that are attracted to that will really sort of out themselves as being that way. And, it doesn't mean that we now dislike those people, that we're not at all.
That's it.
It's just important that we remember that we need people that are consistent, that are loyal, and that really want to get the job done for the right reasons.
Yeah, and I suppose the reason why I bring this about is because Reform have taken a lot of Tories in, and that's of real concern, because some of these Tories are shocking.
Yeah.
To me, and they've been welcomed into the party. And I think it will destabilise what Reform have built. Would Advance do the same thing?
Well, no, I can't see any benefit really of bringing in the people that have been responsible for the demise of the country.
True.
The only argument I can sort of see from a logical perspective as to why they've done that is because, again, it's expedience. They want the argument that, oh, look at us, we've got people that have their hands on the levers of power, so we know how it all operates.
Sure.
You don't need that. You can find extremely competent people. This country is full of extremely competent people that are passionate and desperately want to see the country do well.
Yeah.
You don't need to have people that are responsible for its failure and then expect it to be any better.
Right. And even if there was someone like, because I like Suella, I think she's a good politician. If someone of her calibre was to say, listen, Advance, you're more on my wavelength, I want to come over, would you be like, nah?
I can only answer really for myself. And at this point, I would say no, really.
Yeah.
I would say no because I liked Suella. I did. I thought that she spoke really well. I think she had courage with what she said. And it's disappointing because her move was, I think, a self-serving move.
But do you think it legitimises Reform to a certain extent by her coming on board?
I would say that we've seen Farage in the past say there should be a by-election if somebody moves across,
Right.
And he was outraged, in fact, when I think someone did that back in might have been 2022. Don't quote me on that; it makes me wrong. But he was quite outraged by that.
Yeah.
But then it's all of a sudden it's okay for that. So I don't like the shift in morals. I think that there should be consistency with that.
Yes.
So I think that if they want, and to be fair, the way that the polls are at the moment, it would have been a good move for him to say that and do that. But so I think and to be fair, with Suella, with Reform, there's others like Zahawi, which would be a lot worse.
Oh yeah.
For their image and for what they're supposedly standing for and things like that.
Yeah.
So Suella's the best of the bunch.
Sure.
In that respect.
It's true.
Yeah.
So do you think with the Welsh elections now, obviously we haven't got time for it to be this big campaign to have a majority in the Senedd. However, there's a possibility you can have a few seats. Is that the plan? Or is it really to go gung-ho and get a majority?
We're targeting a few seats.
Okay.
I think our plan is, we would love to be in a position to say, right, absolutely.
Yeah.
What we're planning on doing really is as we've identified good candidates, we'll be looking to sort of build upon our base, our areas that we think are quite strong, with people that we know are going to do untold good in the Senedd. So that's the plan with that. So we will be running those campaigns. We'll be sort of backing our candidates fiercely, right. Trying to get them in to be able to action that sort of change.
So there is a strategy at play.
There is,
because
yes.
I think the biggest turn is because nobody's seeing what's going on in the background. As with reform, obviously, there's people all the time on social media, you know exactly what's happening. But with Advance right now, other than what Peter's putting out, there's just silence.
Yes.
But can you confirm there is a strategy happening, there is things happening in the background to get this show on the road?
Yeah, 100%. Okay. And our media machine will kick in. I think, to be fair, there's a lot. I would say, because there's been criticisms thrown at Ben, there's been criticisms thrown at the party, and what I don't like is seeing the false narratives that are being created in order to slander people and the party and things like that. There's genuine criticisms you could make of the party. As we've grown, you could say that, well, we've not been able to compete with the noise making of other parties.
Right.
And that's because we're not a clickbait party, we're not a noise generating party. Right. I say this to everyone in the party. Right? I say we are the Rolls Royce of parties. The way that it's structured and set up is incredible. Right. How it will lend a voice to our members when everything is set up fully, which won't take that long. We're getting there very quickly. Is going to be phenomenal. Our policies are so, the way in which that they were created. I was in part helped to create the immigration policy. The rigor that goes into putting that together from our head of policy and the policy working groups is absolutely phenomenal. It is watertight, and it really is so well considered. And everything that we're trying to do is done so proper. There's no firing from the hip.
Right.
There's no clickbait strategy. But we do that would be our area that we need to focus on. Well, we focused on so much of getting everything right and perfect. We need to now really sort of up our game in terms of how we get that messaging out there.
Right.
So that is coming as well. But as I said, where we're 9 months old, we haven't got there. But we know the task ahead. We've got to get to 2029. Right. So we need to be doing those things. It's taken us a bit of time. I consider this phase to be sort of like I said when I came on, it was the start of phase 2.
Sure.
Phase 1 was announcing the party, getting past 30,000, putting into the Electoral Commission, getting us registered and everything else. Phase 2 then was about getting organised, putting that structure in place, making sure that we get to that part where we can give our members the voice, we can start to contest elections, we can start to find brilliant candidates, we can roll out the policies and all of that sort of stuff. So at the moment, we're there, but we're getting through it.
I like that because you're putting policy over slogan.
Yes, yeah.
And I think a lot of political parties right now, it sounds great, it sounds alluring, and it sounds like radical change, but they haven't got the policy to back up what they're saying.
No, and I think one of the things that I'd be very interested in is a lot of the parties that are doing that, they're sort of firing from the hip. They can see something is a bit trendy. They've seen some debate on X or on in the news, and then they've just given a position off firing from the hip. This is what we'll do.
Right.
But when you come around to then making the policies, are they going to remember all of those comments that have come from the spur of the moment? Because it's really important, because you're capitalising on that moment of stirring up the public to say, oh, well, this party's going to do this. But then when it comes to it, I don't know if the electorate will always remember everything.
No.
But they will to a certain degree if things aren't in there that they've said. Mm-hmm. And as we found recently with a lot of different politicians that are criticising something now, a year ago they were saying the opposite. There's always a tweet. And if you're doing that sort of stuff, and you're not able to reconcile that position later with your policies, then again you'll fall foul of that, and it shows
Yeah.
very inconsistent messaging.
Right.
So it's important that it's done well, and and to be fair, I would say Advance is doing that well. We're really considered on everything that every step that we take is very measured, but we do need to be a lot louder in our messaging,
Sure.
and we do need to be a bit faster in getting that out.
But that's the one thing that you're focusing on now, is being faster at...
That and about 1,000 other things.
I know. But it always is, isn't it? When an election is coming up as well, to try and build the structure in place for an election is just chaotic sometimes. Yeah. But what I've seen with Advance is that it's being done with consideration, which we're not seeing, especially with Plaid and Labour in the Senedd. They are chucking things out that I don't think they'd be able to stand by.
No. Well, it's like we said earlier. They care about saying things that they actually have no intention on delivering.
No, that's Keir Starmer, isn't it? All over.
Yeah. And really, that's the fundamental problem, because it's it's effectively it's lying. It's lying to the electorate, that's saying that you're going to do stuff, and then they've got a completely different agenda. I mean, like for example, the digital ID. There was no mandate for that. They knew that's what they wanted to do. Yeah. So then they said things like, well, not a penny more on your council tax, or smash the gangs. And they haven't done those things, but they're desperately trying to push through the digital ID. Right.
Now, moving on to what you guys actually believe in. So I've talked to Ben about immigration.
Yes.
And, like I said, he got emotional over how Britain looks, and it doesn't look now how it used to look. Not 10 years ago even. Do you mean it's done a radical change in the wrong direction, because we've had a lot of immigration, but also we've got a lot of Muslims come in that have changed the landscape of what Britain looks like. Whilst we are an accepting country, because that's the foundations of our principles in the UK, is acceptance, tolerance, we're based on Christian morals, it's gone too far.
Yeah.
How do you control that?
I mean, Ben's right, and I think this is the most, salient topic in, British politics. Yeah. It really is. It's what people care about the most, and it's something that's happened now for, as you said, 10 years, longer than that.
Yeah.
Right. How do you deal with it? Well, we have put out our policy of how we would deal with the immigration issue. There's so many things that are headline grabbing that people it gets lost with it all. For example, I think in 2024 there was over 100,000. I think it was 107,000. Again, don't quote me.
No.
on people that were seeking asylum.
Sure.
There was, I think, over 20,000 of those presented as 18 or under, which then means that the state will put them into state schools and things like that.
Sure.
Now, we know that for the most part, people ditch their documents over the side.
Yes.
And, they are actually a lot older, so they're fully grown men. And we don't know what countries they've come from and what threat that they pose. And indeed, many of them have had violent pasts and do pose a threat. Now, as a parent, I said I've got 5 children.
Yeah.
It terrifies me to think that any of my children, especially my eldest daughter, would be in her school sat next to a 19-year-old, 20-year-old man that said he was younger with a violent past.
Yeah.
And this isn't hyperbole or anything. This is
it's actually happening.
Yeah, and there's a famous example actually of a chap called Lol Wenjen Abdul Hamzi, I think.
Right.
And he was from Afghanistan. He came over illegally. He was 19 years old. He said that he was 14. He was put into state schools. I think that there was people saying that this chap is not 14. He's definitely not 14. I think he had dentistry work done and stuff like that, where they said, right, okay, he is not. They still put him in the school. And he later went on to murder a Royal Marine recruit in Bournemouth.
Wow.
And it was then discovered that actually he had murdered people in, I'm not sure exactly where, but in another country, maybe it was Syria, I'm not sure. But he had already committed the murder, he'd already committed violent crimes. Now, what are we doing as a country that we are bringing these people in and putting them in with our children.
But it seems like we're protecting them more than we're protecting our own.
Yeah, well, that's what we're doing. We're putting them above our own people, and it's not just with immigration. We've seen it with everything that we're doing.
Yeah.
We're obviously taking the immigration as an example. We're putting those guys into hotels, HMOs, and things like that. That's all completely paid for. We give them an allowance. We give them devices. We pay for zoo trips, and I've even seen ironically dinghy days out on dinghies and stuff like that. So we're doing these things, but then for our most vulnerable people, we're actually letting them suffer. Our elderly, we're taking their fuel allowance away. For young families, we're actually making it a lot harder for our indigenous population to have children, which is why the birth rate is about 1.4. And again, that then ties into this cycle of dependency, because we then need to import. I say we need to, we don't need to, but that's what's happening from Conservative and Labour governments. They've been importing as many people as they can to prop up their figures so that the OBR will approve their budgets and things like that.
Right.
But we're seeing our country completely shift and change.
It's just unbelievable what's happening. But this may be a bit of a controversial question, but do you think that Tommy Robinson has had something to do with it being acceptable to talk about these things now?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we've really sort of shifted the Overton window. I mean, he was on this, pretty early on.
Yeah, he was.
And he was mentioning that, he was warning of these issues. And of course, at the time, I think he's been talking about it since 2013.
Yeah.
I think around then.
Yeah.
And at that time, the narrative really was, he's a horrible person.
Yeah.
And he was completely
racist,
slandered.
fascist. Yeah.
And he's been targeted completely. Even today, if you was to speak to a lot of people, they'll give you disparaging remarks about him.
Yeah.
Because the narrative sticks, and that's how they've won debates. Is that they don't want to have this conversation. They will then shut it down through, defamation, slander, things like that, targeting someone's character in order to not let them have that debate. It doesn't mean that debate doesn't happen. It just gets pushed to the fringe.
Right.
And then, and the worrying thing is that if our political class continues to ignore this issue, then there's going to be the pendulum swings the other way.
Yeah.
And that's the real concern of having genuine civil unrest. But they're still cracking on with that, because we've just now... what's coming up in the news is Labour really pushing this Islamification laws.
Yes.
And
so dangerous.
And they've created a czar for Muslims and things like. Well, they don't do that for any other group.
No.
And they're doing that to the group that is really acting in many cases undemocratic.
Yeah.
Within our politics. And again, we come back to parties that pander to certain demographics rather than the issues.
Right.
And that's where you end up with appeasing the Secretary of Voting and appeasing those sort of demographics and those block voters.
Yeah. I mean, do you think it's because of money that they appeasing the Muslims rather than what is it about them that they catering to?
Well, I think that I don't know any direct examples of money, but you could argue money in the sense that whenever there's elections where people that are getting paid and having money, then that's where there's going to be a lot of influence.
Right.
And just to look at what we spoke about earlier, Gorton and Denton. I mean, they run on Gaza ticket as well.
Yeah.
Which then pandered to that Muslim vote.
Sure.
They also put out campaigning material in Urdu, I think it was, and Bengali.
Yeah.
So they're targeting those Muslim voters, and there was actually an untold amount of voter fraud going on with family voting.
Yeah.
People going in there and telling their families which way that they should be voting. Obviously, we know that the postal vote is riddled with fraud as well.
Yeah.
And it's got no place in our democracy.
No, that's true. Ant Middleton warned that we are headed for a civil unrest, for civil war. Do you believe that that's true?
Tell me the rate of progression, to be honest with you. I would say that are we closer to civil war now than we've ever been, in the last modern history? Absolutely.
Sure.
Will it get there is a different question. So, I mean, you can agree with Anton that it's very alarmist language, but it's language that you need to listen to, because that's how many people think and feel.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had conversations with people that they knew about my background. I mean, just happened across them. I was having lunch somewhere and people were talking politics, so then I sort of listen and I join in. And they end the conversation saying, "Oh, you was in the military. Do you have any arms?" Obviously they're saying this tongue in cheek, of course.
Yeah, sure.
But if it's the jokes that are being made, it's on people's minds. Having the civil unrest, and we're seeing now more and more protests. Places like Crowborough, Braintree, up and down the country. Canary Wharf, there was obviously the hotel that they've used there. I've seen it in Merseyside, in Blackpool. There's loads of protests going on outside these hotels that are being used. But the government doesn't listen, really. They think that the issue is with they know what the issue is, to be fair. But they think resolving the issue will remove them from the hotels and put them into HMOs, obviously. But that makes the situation significantly worse. I mean, I was talking to a few years ago now, when actually I was campaigning general election in Braintree, a lady that had people living in an HMO next door to her.
Oh, right.
And she was 9 months pregnant, and actually they came across to her house just randomly, spontaneously, with a sword and started attacking the door. And I think the guy was arrested. Within 48 hours, he was just put back there.
What?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's terrifying what's happening. So the hotels aren't the issue. No. The issue is the people, to be completely clear. And that's something that needs to be addressed. And if that's not addressed, then unfortunately and very worryingly, perhaps Ant Middleton's correct.
Right. And do you think then would advance strap the nation of sanctuary over Wales?
Well, we would deport and detain everyone that's here illegally.
Sure.
So we would make sure that none of these issues are occurring anywhere.
Right.
The United Kingdom would be in sanctuary.
So just even when it wouldn't exist?
No, what we would be doing really is as states in our immigration policy, anyone that's here illegally would be detained immediately. Okay. Yeah. They're illegal by definition.
Yes. Yeah.
And as we've discussed, there's many examples of the genuine threat to the public.
Yeah.
So we would detain everybody.
Yeah.
Everyone would be detained and would be deported, immediately.
Yes.
As fast as humanly possible, every single person would be deported. Whether we then need to discuss things with countries that they've originated from, so that we can repatriate them there, or whether there's third countries where we would then also do that.
Sure.
We would make it very, I suppose, hostile for them to want to be staying here, because it would be that they're detained. They wouldn't have the luxuries that they have now. It would be a very unpleasant stay for them. So we would find that they would very quickly tell us where they would like to be dropped off, and we would facilitate. Yeah.
Now, would you put Ant Middleton as mayor for advance, do you think?
I sort of know Ant, actually.
Do you?
Yeah, I mean, I
think he's great.
I passed training with Ant Middleton.
Oh, okay.
I often have said this because I know for certain he wouldn't remember me.
Yeah.
In training at the time, I think it's changed slightly now. It was 32 weeks long, and I got to the commando test, which is like week 30, and I ended up getting injured on the 30 miler, so the last commando test that we have.
Right.
So then I ended up joining from my troop into Ant's troop and passing the commando tests and then going on. So I was in the same troop as him for about 2 weeks.
Right.
But then I think where he ended up being based in Poole in Dorset, I was based there as well. I was on different sort of rotations, so we never really bumped into each other while I was working there. No, I think Ant's great. He embodies the sort of the sort of strong image that we need to be projecting now. Like for too long, as you've said, we've been sort of told that we're a very tolerant nation and things like that. And I really believe that Michael Harp, I think, is the author that said something like, hard times make strong men, strong men make good times make weak men, weak men make hard times. Right?
Yeah.
We've gone from a position where the bulldog spirit that we had in World War II, we stood alone against tyranny and triumphed, and the country came together and just did remarkable things. Extraordinary people with remarkable resolve doing those things. Whereas if you was to go and do some vox pops and talk to people now on the street, would you fight? I think there's a famous one actually where a guy's like, nope, I'd be out of here. I'll be going back.
Oh yeah, no, I've seen that. Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
and that's the attitude now.
It's terrible.
So we need to be a lot more muscular in defending who we are, and we need to get back to that strong times of having that sort of resolve. To make sure that we're standing by who we are. We'll lose who we are otherwise. It will happen. We will eventually, very quickly actually, we'll lose that identity, and it will get to a tipping point where we either won't get it back, or it will take a very long time. Because since '97, I genuinely believe this. At that point, there was a concerted effort to really sort of repackage what it means to be British.
Right.
And within that, they had this woke mind virus infect the schools and things like that. So the generation are brought up to really dislike who we are as a country.
Right.
Forget about our triumph, forget about what we delivered, and be apologetic almost for who we are. And we need to get back to being, completely proud of our history, our heritage, of who we are. And I think that, the reason I think Ant is being so successful is because he really shows that.
He does.
And a lot of people can see that and they think, absolutely. Yeah. The people are there. The people are right there with him.
Yeah.
They're with Advance. They're with Right of Centre in general.
Yes.
We just need to ensure that what we're doing is genuinely for the country, not self-serving or anything like that. But the country's there, so I think Ant would be fantastic.
You should ask him. You should ask him to be mayor.
Yeah.
Does he done as independent, isn't he? Anyway, he's running as an independent.
I believe so. Yeah. I mean, there's I think it's 2028 the mayoral elections, so he's got a bit of time.
Yeah.
Perhaps I'll reach out and see if he wants a beer. Yeah.
And then say that it was me what said. But thank you, Richard, for coming on, and we'll probably interview you again. But thank you so much.
Yeah, of course, whenever, absolutely.
Awesome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.